Is my video visible?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So there could be still some of you who are new to this particular series. So Ram and I will give a very brief introduction that when we say superior, we're not referring to someone like compared to a Mahatma Gandhi or a Mother Teresa, but superior with respect to ourselves. Getting inspired by people whom we have met in our day-to-day lives. You know, in our family, amongst our teachers, friends, neighbors, colleagues, ordinary people who displayed some superior aspect. Maybe even on one occasion in the manner in which they handled something or interacted with someone. And this is what we mean by superior, that it is always compared to ourselves. And in every session, you know, the content we provide under 3 different aspects: what we call the power of ordinariness, what we learn from ordinary people, learning from the Lilliputians, again, people whom you and I may not have come across, but great learnings from how they went about doing something, and towards becoming superior, which is what this whole series is about. And all of that leading to consistent performance and to be able to lead a life filled with success and joy. Ram?
Thanks, JK. Good evening and a happy new year, everybody. As we have been saying from the start of the series, this indic way is about individual improvement. How do I become a better person? Which is often a nice starting point, but then we want to know, how do I become better? Starting with is an awareness of maybe some areas of improvement. Maybe it is, how do I reduce my anger? Maybe it is my relationship, better judgment, or not to be judgmental. So different aspects for each one of us to take stock. And then where do I learn from? Of course, there are great masters, books, literature, but we are saying if we just look around us and look at different interactions every day with different people, there is a library of opportunity to learn, as long as we are looking to learn continuously. Improvement, we are saying, is little by little every day. And if we can do that every day, every occasion, we find some learning, we will end up towards becoming much better, superior people with the objective of both success and joy. They're not mutually exclusive. The indic way says we can be successful and happy. And that's really what this session is about. Becoming a better person ourselves towards the objective of happiness and success. Back to you, JK.
Thanks, Ram. So Vishwa, if you can move to the next slide, please. Yeah, you can click through till the end. So you'll find that we have already covered 7 sessions, and in each of those sessions, you will find that a word has been struck off and another word has been replaced or presented. And that's the whole idea, that it's about becoming superior, not through what we think is the way, but many different ways. So superior via ordinariness, via competencies, via sincerity and genuineness, via wisdom and common sense, not necessarily knowledge. Being a follower, and that session was interesting. It was follower of what and not follower of whom. And the immediate session superior via being not a referee, but a player. And we are getting into superior via not analysis, but solutions. And so this session, particularly, the challenges that we have both in our professional and personal lives, and it will focus on aspects that we can pick up to move towards solutions in our life. Ram, any comments?
So we are not, even the referee and player, there is a role for a referee, but it is greater joy to be a player. So there is a role, it's not an end in itself. And that is really where it is in each of this. So where does an analysis start and end? And how can we move to solutions? That's really what we're talking about here. So back to you, Jake.
Yeah. Sure, next slide, please. You can run through the whole thing till the end. Yeah. So for some of us who are new, we'll quickly do what we call revisit. That therefore, who is a superior person? And it's clear, very clearly about, letting go of a lot of our pettiness, becoming happy for others, developing what we refer to as a fragrant personality, okay? Not a perfumed or a put-on personality. So it's devoid of pettiness, happy for others, and ability to take ups and downs, naturally joyous, enthusiastic, pleasant, and caring. Most important, taking responsibility for our own life via continuous effort and action, and therefore to be able to reach our potential and help others reach theirs. Ram?
No, JK.
Next one, please, Michelle. So we have analyzed becoming superior under two aspects. Quickly to say that therefore it's about letting go of what we refer to as odors of our mind. And we have taken the parallel of odors of the body, but the odors of the mind, different odors that affect us, more so it affects people around us. So it could be anger, it could be jealousy, envy, many other odors that we have, judgmental nature, so many of the odors which we have listed in earlier sessions. But the whole thing is about first even knowing that we have these odors. So it's an awareness of the fact that we have these odors, and then that we wish to do something about it, and then go about whether we have to clean it, mask it, avoid aspects that create these odors. And that's the parallel we have taken in terms of saying there are odors of the mind that we need to let go. And in every session, we identify an odor and how that odor can be either minimized or it can be let go. Next slide, please, Vishwa. Again, you can go till the end. And the same parallel that as much as there are odors, we all possess many strengths within ourselves, and we call them the indic muscles. And these muscles are not outside. You don't need to go to a physical gym to build like you build your biceps or something else, but these are muscles that we have within ourselves. And it's only about realizing that we have these muscles, understanding them, then internalizing or nurturing these muscles. But there's a far more important thing than just building these muscles, which is using them. So the whole thing which we focus on is, hey, how do we use those muscles that are there internally with us? We don't need to go anywhere. And both these sides, letting go of the odors and building these muscles, equip us for consistent performance and towards that success and joy that we identified as an objective. Ram?
Again, in the letting go, we are saying it's a journey. In the picking up of these muscles, starting with is an awareness and then building. So every day, what are we minimizing and what are we developing? It's a it's like going to a physical gym. Day by day, we become better. And that is what the whole approach needs to be. It doesn't disappear overnight, nor do we become superior people overnight. It's a journey, and we need to be constantly aware and keep progressing, either in reducing and in picking up these strengths and using it. A lot of these sessions are focusing on application of these strengths. Back to you, JK.
So Ram, I'll just take 1 minute. I'll come back onto the laptop. Just 1 second.
Okay.
So that's about the revisit to say that the whole aspect is, like Ram also shared, it's about moving towards this better performance by becoming the superior person. So Vishwa, I mean, I'll try and share, but you can move to the next slide.
Sure.
So in every session, pause there, pause. No, go back to the first, please. Just leave it at the first. In every session, we share with you wisdom from many different sources. Okay, those of you who attended the entire series, you will know we have taken from Einstein, we have taken from Confucius, we have taken from Tiruvalluvar, and this time we have some lovely wisdom, which is from Vidura. And those of you who know your Mahabharata will know that Vidura, brother of Dhritarashtra and Pandu, uncle of the Pandavas and Kauravas, wisest among their entire family, and therefore prime ministers of the Kurus. And he had some wonderful things to say, especially to Dhritarashtra at a point in time when Dhritarashtra was down. So Ram, maybe you could read it out.
Sure. So the first one is, he whose intended acts and proposed counsels remain concealed from foes, and whose acts become known only after they've been done, is considered wise. Not to be blabbering and being naive about all this, that you think through and then act and defeat your foe. That is considered wise, because the context here is the Mahabharata, and he's talking to Dhritarashtra, and therefore the foes. But this means competition. This means our own internal inertia, which is the foe that we need to fight. This is what it is. He who intends. So the next, JK. He who wisheth to control his counselors before controlling his own self, or to subdue his adversaries before controlling his counselors, at last succumbs deprived of strength. The focus is, first is focus on self-development. Once we are in control of ourself, our behavior, our anger, our muscles, then we can control our counselors and therefore can control our adversaries. The usual challenge is that we look at ourselves last and look at everything else, and we say we lose our strength and therefore lose the battle. JK, anything to add, or I'll keep reading?
This is fine. Vishwa, next one, please. Yeah.
Of acts, those accomplished by intelligence are first. Those accomplished by the arms, second. Those by the thighs and those by bearing weights upon the head are the lowest. Now, you will have noticed maybe that in our sessions, we keep talking about strengthening of the intellect and the use of the intellect to prompt our action. the more the intellect is available, the better the quality of our action. And that is really what we are seeing here, that if we think through what we want to do, why we want to do, how we want to do, before we start acting, that is the most accomplished. The use of the intellect and therefore the intelligence that comes from there. So that is the reference here. JK?
Next one, Vishwa.
Vishwa, sorry. Exertion, self-control, skill, carefulness, steadiness, memory, and commencement of acts after mature deliberations, know that these are the roots of prosperity. Similar to the previous, think through. We keep saying preparedness, a strategy in our business, everything to a plan. We need to know our destination, where we would like to go. What is our goal in life? And then once we know where we want to go and we think through how to get there and then start acting, this knee-jerk action driven by emotion, by the vagaries of the mind, that is not the route to prosperity or success. So think first is to know where you want to go, where we want to go, and then think through how to get there and then act. That is after deliberation. Vishwa? This is a fantastic one. Do that during the day, which may enable thee to pass the night in happiness, and do that during 8 months of the year, which may enable thee to pass the seasons of rains happily. Many people have to have sleeping doses to go to sleep, because not for anything else, because the intellect was not available during the day, and the evening and night it's full of regrets. Oh, shucks, I wish I had done that. Oh, I wish I had not done that. I should have said it. I shouldn't have said it. So many a time, the evening and nights are spent reflecting on the day, usually thinking, oh, shucks, what the hell did I do or didn't do? And if we can have the intellect available during the day when we are acting as the prompt to action, then we will live in happiness. The night shall pass, we'll have a peaceful sleep. And similarly, the preparedness that we will have the ups and downs. So reflected by 3-4 months of the monsoon, when that level of activity is low, and therefore how prepared are we during the rest of the year to, the ant and the grasshopper stories, stuff like that that we have seen. How do we prepare for the ups and downs of life whenever we have the chance to apply our mind and move on? Vishwa? The gods do not protect men taking up clubs in their hands after the manner of herdsmen. Unto those, however, whom they wish to protect, they grant intelligence. So it is again the emphasis that we need to think before we act, not driven by the mind. And what is happening for most of us is that emotions, likes and dislikes, judgmental nature often prompts a response, prompts an action which we end up regretting. So many thousands of years ago, Vidura said, even the gods don't protect men who act with just clubs in hands, again, context being of war. And therefore, heaven's sake, use intelligence, use your intellect. Vishwa?
Before that, so
Sorry, yeah.
Vishwa, I think I will try and now share the screen so you can maybe exit this, then I'll try. So more important, I feel, for all of you, what was amazing to both Ram and myself, the wisdom which has been written by someone 3,000 years ago, showing such a clear understanding of people's natures, and what you need to do to either remain focused on tasks and activities, or either to maintain your happiness. Now, what is therefore really amazing to both of us, and I'm sure if when you all think about it, which means 3,000 years ago, as human beings, we were the same. 3,000 years later, it is relevant to us. We can connect with each one of those lines and statements because we are still the same. Yeah, there could have been advancement in technology. We wear more sophisticated clothes. Maybe we have other aspects, but I don't think as human beings we have changed, and we have the same aspects of whether performance or happiness or how to go about it. Confused minds, clear minds, and this whole thing is about getting ourselves open and thinking about it, because only then we're going to take in whatever is getting presented towards working on that for ourselves becoming superior as we go along. Yeah, Ram?
No, nothing. Go ahead.
Can you see this now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good to have you back in the driver's seat.
Oh, thanks. So I'm also feeling very powerful. Okay, so let's come to the main session, which is about superior not via analysis, but via solution. So let's first understand the analysis part. So we are raising this question, those of you who attended our earlier session about the referee and the player, you will remember we started the same place where, we automatically become a referee because it's easy to comment and easy to say what is right and what is not wrong. And we raised this question, is it easier being the referee? And so we are starting with the same thing, is analysis easier? And I want to share with you a lovely anecdote which will set our minds onto the topic and arriving at what that we want to establish. So this was a movie, a spoof on an Agatha Christie movie, which I saw many, many years ago. And there were 13 people seated around a dinner table. 13 people seated around a dinner table. It was approaching close to midnight. There was a huge grandfather clock in that dining room, and it started to strike 1, 2, etc. up to 12. At the strike of 12, the lights went out. The lights came back after 1 minute. And they found one of the guests face down on a bowl of soup with a knife on his back. One of the guests was a detective. So he said, hey, nobody moves. Nobody moves out of this room. The 13 of us around a dinner table, close to midnight, clock starts to strike, and at the exact strike of 12, lights go out. And when lights come back after 1 minute, one of our guests face down in a bowl of soup with a knife on his back. And this can mean only one thing, but I don't know what it is. So that's what we want to establish. There are a lot of elaboration on the data, what happened, how it was, what it is. This is what this happened. This can mean only one thing, but I don't know what it is. So we want to talk of this analysis to say, why are we in the analysis mode? Is it easier being connecting to the previous session? Is it easier being a referee, and is analysis easier? And therefore, why we get into, all of us know this term analysis paralysis, it's about charts and graphs and comparisons and contrasts and possibilities and what if scenarios, like whatever this detective said, each one of us can relate it to, or we would have experienced, whether in our professional or personal lives, where a lot of data. I mean, I want to give this example all of us have experienced. You just take COVID, for example. My God, the amount of data, especially during the first 6 months, and I'm sure it continues, on what this is and what it can do and how it is and what it contains and etc. and etc. and etc. etc. Whereas what was always important was, hey, therefore, what should you do? But there was an enormous amount of data, what we call the analysis paralysis. Ram?
Yeah, same COVID, even now in its third wave, the number of opportunities given to stand-up comedians on what the government said, what the health ministry said, what the CDC said, and they just need to look at it and say, this is going to be, that's it, third wave, deep trouble. To coming to saying, don't stay at home, 2 weeks, 5 days. Nobody knows. Finally, it is up to us to wear a mask, be sanitized, and not behave silly. So the amount of data from there, most of us switch off the TV nowadays because we are flooded with this kind of, what they say, data diarrhea maybe. Don't know what to do with it. And that is what we are saying when we say analysis, that we could get drowned in data without knowing what to do with it. So, yep. Back to you, JK.
So we want to raise this question. Is analysis dependable? How come then two analysts present two completely different views? You know, market may go up, market may come down. I'm sure all of us have experienced this. And I remember very recently, there was somebody who was talking to me to say, hey, you know what, JK, it's the right time to invest in China. And then he sent me one whole lot of data on Chinese economy, their policies, what they've been doing, all sorts of things. And this was a reasonably long report, which I don't read, but I've skimmed through, but lots of charts and graphs and stuff like that, but about China, the opportunity, why you should invest now. Then there was another, again, friend of mine to whom I called and said, hey, this is what I got. Yeah, he said, no, JK, please watch out. I'm going to send you one more on why you should not invest in China at all. And then he sent me this great report, and it also had great analysis, great things to say, you know, why the Chinese economy is controlled, blah, blah, not transparent, something, all data, but you take what you want to present two completely different views. So is analysis towards an objective? Is analysis towards an objective? Ram, maybe you can take up this, 2 plus 2, just to establish this.
We've all heard this joke about somebody asking an engineer what is 2 plus 2, asking, an administrator what is 2 plus 2. And everybody, both of them said 4, what is a big deal question? And then they asked the accountant, what is 2 plus 2? And she smartly said, what do you want it to be? So when we know what we want it to be, is our analysis then tending towards what we want it to be? Or is it neutral? That is the question. How much is 2 plus 2? What do you want it to be?
Yeah. Same thing, all of us know that when we do our own math problems, geometry or algebra, it's required to prove that, triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF or whatever. So it's required to prove that. And you set about seeing how to prove that particular aspect. I've seen this thing in my own work environment. There was a very competent but aggressive salesperson. She was consistent performer, outbeat everybody else, but she was an individual performer. She didn't care about anybody else. She didn't care about the team. She didn't care about stuff. She went about doing her target, and she will do it every quarter, every month. Customers were very delighted with her, but the entire sales team, they were absolutely ragged about the fact that she's a performer and she was loudmouth and she would tell people off and she will. But that's the person, but she was a performer. And therefore, there were two different views getting presented to say, hey, she's actually not competent here. She somehow gets these orders, but she has no process, no nothing, etc. And there was one particular HR person who drew up this thing to say why she's not really competent and she mustn't be there because she's spoiling the entire environment. And then there was the VP sales who said, no, she's a performer. So it happens in our own environment, saying any analysis, and there was data taken saying, oh, this is what she did last year, she didn't do this year, she did this, she didn't do that, she came to office, she didn't come to office, blah, 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 blah. So we want to leave this question. Is analysis therefore dependable? Is analysis towards an objective? And therefore, we're twisting it around to say analysis towards an objective versus objective analysis, and which is where the whole thing is. If the analysis, if it's an objective analysis, it has value. And therefore we want to raise this question, is analysis important? Okay, if it is either dependable, not dependable, or we're not sure, is analysis important? We want to categorically say, yes, it is important. It's not just a judgmental thing. It is fact or data-based, and it presents trends comparison on a lot of aspects which are important to us. So we want to say analysis is important. Though sometimes analysis may be towards an objective, as a decision maker, as the CEO, or as somebody in charge of aspects, whether in family life or in professional life, it's then up to us on how we view that particular aspect. But the analysis per se, we're saying is still important. It's not something which is just to be dismissed, but it is to be understood. Ram?
No, JK.
So staying is the problem. So what we have found it in many cases. I mean, people will say that, I mean, the COVID situation is one, but I've seen this in business many times during the downturn, even during these last 2 years, you know, when we were all uncertain about what is going to happen in our own company. People will tend to stay in the problem, which is easier because you'll describe the situation saying, hey, you know, COVID is here, yeah, they're all uncertain, customers are going to go away. Customers are not going to decide, everybody is uncertain. I think this year is going to be a problem. We're going to have cash flow issues. We're going to have sales downturn. People are going to leave us. So you expand on that situation. And then you expand on the consequence saying, you know what, hey, if we don't do anything, I think we may need to close down. If we don't do anything, I think it will be very difficult to rebuild. I think if we don't do something, and therefore you expand on the consequences to say that if you don't do something, we're going to be in a mess. Staying in the problem, talking about it, talking only about the consequences gets us nowhere. But this is again the offshoot of being in analysis. Ram?
So, you know, how to get out of this? For, you know, when we were starting Computer Point in Bombay, we had a bunch of very bright young people, and we divided up the work, you know, go get partnerships, you know, computers to be sold, different things to fill up the Computer Point showroom. It was a retail showroom for computers in the 80s. So different people were given tasks of go do this, this at the starting of Monday. And then on Saturday morning, we would all meet again to review what have we done and what we have yet to do. So I remember right in the beginning, after we did all this and I was reviewing on Saturday morning, everybody said, oh, we could do this, we couldn't do this. But there was progress from all except one person and kept quiet throughout. So I said, what happened? What have you done? He said, there were so many things to do that I was thinking, what if this and what should I do here and that? There were so many things to do. I didn't know where to start. So I've done nothing. And this is at the end of 5 days or 6 days. So this is what happens to us. We are overwhelmed by the situation. We analyze it till the cows come home without thinking of how to break it up and move on to what to do, small bites, but to start looking for how to move forward. But many of us just get overwhelmed by the situation and saying, oh my God, so many things to do. Best is to just sit and be overwhelmed and not start. Back to you, Jackie.
So going beyond analysis, we have established that analysis is important, but analysis may be towards an objective. Important to take in the data and the facts from the analysis, but it's far more important going beyond the analysis to saying, hey, so what? What do we do next? And towards that, then going beyond the analysis, going beyond the fact that, hey, in my opinion, no, this is what, etc., etc. The most important thing is to piece together the facts, which means what is the actual situation. So whether it is analysis by different people, views presented by different people, not to take A's word alone, listen to B also. Sometimes you directly contact a customer or the other party and you will really know what the story is and whether A did this or B didn't do that. So the first aspect going beyond the analysis is piece together the facts. I want to share this lovely little story again from the Mahabharata. We have shared this with you that Bhishma, when lying on the bed of arrows, was approached by Yudhishthira and over nearly 40-50 days, asked him over 300 questions and he answers them, giving different examples. And this is one of those where the story goes like this, that there's a jackal who in its previous birth was a king who hadn't really done the right thing. So this jackal, though born in the graveyard and it grows up in the graveyard, it has some recollections of its previous birth and it says, I must correct myself and I must lead a very honorable and a righteous sort of life. So it is helpful to other people, doesn't eat meat, thrives on fruits and other aspects, always does good things for the people around, talks about being righteous, talks about then aspects that are important to become better and better. But the people around the jackal, other animals living there, etc., don't like the jackal's righteous behavior. And so they talk to the jackal and say, hey, why are you like this here? I mean, all of us are born to be different. Now, why are you doing all these sorts of things? The jackal says, no, it's not birth alone, but it's how you lead your life that makes you who you are. And birth is not the only aspect. And those of you who remain to say, this is how I am born and this is how I'm going to be, you have no opportunity to grow, but I'm different. Now, a tiger overhears this conversation, and the tiger is the ruler of that particular land. And so the tiger approaches the jackal and says, look, I'm looking for people like you to become ministers and make sure that my kingdom is run well. And I would do anything and give you anything that you require for you to join me and together help and build a better country, better land, and do good things for the people. I want you to be my minister. The jackal says, I'm honored, but please understand, I have led all my life being who I am. I am nobody's follower. I've been listening to nobody. And it's very difficult for me to report to you and be one obedient servant to the king. So that's something which I can't do. I will speak my mind. I will do only what I think is right. But whatever I do and whatever I think of will be to your benefit. It will have no selfish motive, but it has larger aspects. So the tiger says, I'm willing to do anything. And so the jackal says, if I join, I report only to you. I will work with nobody else in your kingdom. And whatever I wish to do, you must allow me to do. And you will not persecute my followers because of any reason, because we will go after doing the right thing. The tiger agrees, and the jackal becomes a minister in the kingdom. And he very quickly cleans up the whole place, institutes processes which will benefit the people, brings in aspects which make sure there is clean and transparent administration. People are happy. But the existing ministers and those who were exploiting the system, they don't like the jackal. They don't like all. So they get together and say, hey, we must get rid of this fellow. Otherwise, we all can't be here, and sooner or later, we'll get sacked. So they look out for an opportunity. They know that the tiger likes a very precious meat served to the tiger during lunch. And when that is left there, they connive to steal it and take it and place it in the jackal's chambers. And when the tiger comes for lunch, he says, where is my precious meat? It's not there. And then somebody says, you know what? I saw the jackal take it. So that's how it is. And then he sends somebody and they find the meat is in the jackal's chambers. And he loses his temper and he says, off with your head. And that's when the tiger's mother, who overhears this, takes him aside and tells him, what are you doing? You're being so easily led by one person's view, one group's view, and you haven't even paused to think that this particular jackal has done so many good things for you in the very short time that he has been with you. He's never looked after his own interests. And you know that this jackal doesn't eat meat, so why would he steal meat and take it to his chambers? Use your head. Come to your senses and evaluate to see what could have happened. And then when that is happening and when that is being said, one of the people goes to the tiger and says, Master, this is what really happened. I saw some of the ministers ask one of the servants to pick it up and take and leave it and blah, blah, blah. And the tiger gets to know the truth. And so he apologizes to the jackal and he says, look, I'm very sorry, but you please continue. But the jackal refuses and goes back to his graveyard. But the story is about that, therefore, piecing together the facts, going beyond the data, just because somebody is saying something becomes so important in getting to that. Ram?
So, in the previous slide, we touched upon a quality that we would all like to have, which is to have objective analysis or objectivity in the way we approach anything. Objectivity means what JK just said, that we don't go by just a view. We try to look at a holistic view, multiple views, and then take a judgment on our own. The immediate emotion for the tiger was one of anger and loss of something that it liked. And therefore, it actually lost touch with its intellect because its hunger And the fact that somebody could take away something that it liked overshadowed all other qualities. That's how we lose our objectivity. Our emotions come in the way of clear thinking, of looking at point A or view A and view B. And therefore, one of the things that we need to strengthen is our objectivity, the ability to be rational, to bring our intellect into anything that we do. Then the quality of our decision making, the quality of our action, everything can change, which happened only after the mother drew the attention. And so, is that mother available in us as a voice that often we ignore? So can we listen in to that conscious, or whatever we say? Always our intuition, something, our experience is there, gets overshadowed by emotion. So objectivity is really what we are trying to strengthen here. JK.
Thanks, Ram. So going beyond the analysis towards the solution, the saying is ascertaining, establishing the facts. Lovely statement I saw, you're entitled to your own opinions, but you're not entitled to your own facts. And many times that happens. You don't know what is being presented is actual fact, or it's a doctored sort of fact. So evaluate the assumption. Every analysis has assumptions. This is the other thing we all know. And so based on an assumption, I can present anything. I mean, I've looked at a lot of revenue projections of different companies, especially many startups with whom we work. And I will say, hey, great projections here. Now, what are the assumptions? Because based on the assumption, we are going to grow at 100% every year. It's the only assumptions that they've got as far as how is not addressed. But assumptions alone can get you some analysis. This is important. Do I trust or accept that analyst's view? And so because we know that can be multiple views, so this becomes important. What it is not approach to arrive at what it is. So, even in Kaun Banega Crorepati, you can knock off 2 of the options before you look at the other 2 options. So what it is not is an important aspect to knock off to arrive at what it is. I'll invite Meera first, and she wanted to share a nice example in one of her assignments. So Meera, could you please? Meera, are you there?
Can't see her. Have you Meera, you can unmute yourself if you're there.
Yeah, sorry. I couldn't unmute earlier.
Okay. We can hear you now.
Okay. JK talked about staying in the problem. I have an example of how not to do that, but to move to the solution. Okay, so just 2-3 minutes. 3 to 4 years ago, I joined as a COO of an electric vehicle company. The company was very, very cash deficient, and we were hoping to find a strategic partner to help run the company or to buy it over. I formally joined in July, and then in August we had a board meeting a month later to review the last financial year and to see how the performance of the first quarter looked against the current year's business plan. The target for the current year was an ambitious 18.2 crores. It's a small company, against a moderate turnover of the previous year, which was 7.1 crores. The first quarter figures was just 300 vehicles across 3 months, which is less than 2 crores. So that was not very encouraging. So one of the directors suggested that we reduce the year's target. A lot of region analysis, model-wise analysis of the earlier sales was done to see how realistic the current year targets were. They said 2 crores per quarter into 4 is about 8 crores. So you push on sales, you could possibly touch 11 crores, and that's not a bad growth rate. That's what the director said. So all along, the discussion was on how impossible it was to achieve the target. And, so all the analysis was leading to confirming that the target was not achievable, and the CEO was inclined to agree. My response to this was, the figure of 18.2 crores was fixed to attract a potential investor or partner. Therefore, we had to work to sell 8,000 plus vehicles. So now that was a solution was required to lead to that, the figure, 18.2 crores. Last year and the year before was not great, but for different reasons. A research team and infrastructure, etc., was set up to indigenize the core components of the electric vehicle. I mean, research is a very important factor in new technology. So the solution was to increase production because there was a sales demand as per the dealers. So the key issue was for production was not people, nor the team's morale, but actually supplies, which meant that to get this to the solution, we needed a cash inflow, one-time cash inflow to set the supplies coming. Thereafter, production, sales momentum, I think would set the ball rolling. So that was the solution proposed. The directors were relieved to get a workable solution. And actually, so therefore that required cash inflow, which is not great, just required for 1 month. Thereafter, it worked on, was put in, and we moved with increased numbers every month. And by the end of March of that year, that financial year, we actually touched 18.25 crores. Enough to cover the target, but not enough to stress the employees out. So this was just a small example to talk about analysis was it, and we got our investors, and everything went fine. But the next year target was 80 crores, and we reached there also. So, I mean, I think that's self-explanatory now. I mean, so the analysis that was being done through the meeting was...
Voice is breaking, Meera. You need to come closer.
Okay. The analysis that was being done during the meeting was not helping because it was focusing on the problem. And where we went to after that was saying, how do we or how can we achieve the 18.2 crores? And then we achieved it because we only looked at the solution.
Your network issues.
Disturbance
is there.
Okay, I'll come out of my video maybe.
Hey, thank you, Meera. That was a lovely example. So what really certainly establishes that when the data and the presentation and the assumptions are all starting in her own example only from the previous year or the previous 2 years and then project from there, you end up with a different approach to what you do. So when Meera brought in another thing to say, hey, there were lots of things we may not have done in the previous year, and therefore there's an opportunity to do something different. And the approach itself is different because the market is growing. So the market is not based on the previous year, but the market opportunities are growing. So when there's an opportunity in the marketplace, it is a different approach which needs to be done. And so infusion of cash flow and infusion of this enabled them to go after what it is. So when you go towards the solution, it is establishing the fact, it's evaluating assumptions, going beyond just one analysis and arriving at your own thing. And therefore, what we want to establish is when we go towards the solution, the key one-liner which we want to talk about, the analyst is not the decision maker. You are the decision maker. So any analyst, like we have said in the previous session, the referee is not the player. The referee is not going to score goals. The referee is not going to score runs. The referee is not going to win a match for us. It is the player who's going to score goals or score runs or win the match for us. Same thing here. Towards the solution, any amount of analysis and analyst, the analyst is not the decision maker. We are the decision maker. And therefore, going towards that solution, we don't need to do anything. We can do something. We can do something else. Do a specific thing. Doing the correct thing is what we want to talk about. That from all those analysis, all those situations, things that we know, it's not about doing nothing or doing anything, but it's doing something specific or correcting. And therefore, we want to establish another thing which is there in the decision maker. And it was there in what Meera was also sharing. That what is the objective? It is not only about data and analysis. Only the decision maker clearly knows what is the objective. Meera said, for example, the objective is, hey, we must excite this investor to invest in the company. So it's not only about sales growth. For somebody else, it is a limited objective to say, can we achieve sales growth? But there's a larger objective that unless 18.2 crores is done, the investor is not going to have interest to invest. So there's a completely different objective. So the objective is important in moving towards that solution and going towards either a specific aspect we need to do or the correct aspect that we need to. Ram, any thoughts?
Yeah. So often, Shiv Kumar, did you have something to say or? Often as we are looking at all the data, we forget what we are trying to solve. I think in one of our earlier sessions as a management trainee, I was told that you're trying to jump to finding answers without knowing what the problem is that you're trying to solve. So clarity on what we are trying to solve, which is what Meera tried to bring up in this example, and then trying to do the correct thing. Once we have a clarity on where we are going, why we are going, then we will start looking at how to get there. And therefore, to keep that destination, that problem, and to come back to what are we trying to solve, and clarity on that will actually help in trying to do the correct thing. Back to you, Jackie.
Yeah. So taking a decision. Though taking a decision, there are some unanswered questions in the person's mind. And this is true for all of us, whether it's in our personal lives or in our professional life, especially when there is something important on which we need to take a decision. The unanswered questions are, is this the right decision? Will the problem get solved? Will the desired result get achieved? These three, in some way, will always be there in the person's mind. You take any situation, you take the COVID situation. So if we wear a mask, if we sanitize, are we sure that therefore, COVID won't come to our doorstep? Will the problem get solved? Is this the right decision? If we invest, will that happen? If we hire 2 more people, will that get done? If we incur these expenses, will something happen? Whatever it is, these unanswered questions are there in the person's mind. And we want to take this particular aspect to say, no, before I get to it, Ram, anything here before we get?
So the question is there always a right decision? If there are 2 of us looking at the same problem, would we have the same answers? And would the means to an end be similar? So I think the key is that we tend to act, we need to take a decision, minimizing the risk of any mistake we make. That is how the analysis helps. So right, wrong, we will know in life over time. Are we using our intellect? Are we using all the data points available? Are we looking at the assumptions underlying it? Can we minimize the consequences and then take a decision? Is how we look at the unanswered questions. Yeah, JK?
Yeah. So I found this lovely thing which I call the Chanakya method on how Chanakya went about many of his decisions, especially about one aspect I read on who should be appointed as ministers. And different people had different views. Okay. One person said, it's best to have classmates of the king appointed as ministers because they have played together, they know each other well, they'll form a good team. Another person said, no, the classmates will also know the weaknesses of the king, and that is no good. They might have been okay when they were small kids playing around, but when this person has become king, we don't want the classmates. And therefore, we should have people who are faithful to the king. Another person says, no, but faithfulness alone is of no value. We want them to be intelligent and capable of doing what they need to do. So faithfulness alone is of no great use. So another person says, no, but they should have some capability to be ministers. And therefore, if they don't have administrative capabilities, you can't have them as ministers. So it goes like that. When finally one person says, no, we can't have just people who know something about politics because that will be completely theoretical. We need people who have actually had experience. So maybe it's good to have people who are from high families, who have had maybe some experience in seeing their own fathers, grandfathers being ministers, but qualifications are far more important than any one of these. And Chanakya says, I go with that particular view that qualification is the most important thing, and the capability of people will be known only when they are put to task and they start to achieve. And therefore, we will go towards a system where qualifications are the first, but we will take these other parameters as important in the subsidiary things to appoint ministers. So the Chanakya method, query and analyze all expert views, take all that are relevant and valuable, add your own assessment and inputs before arriving at a conclusion. Ram?
No, JK.
Yeah. So power to take decisions. So we've done all that. We are clear we need to go beyond analysis. We know what comes in our way before we take the decision. We know that there are many processes which are useful in taking the decision. Objective being one, eliminating options which we don't meet the objective, and therefore arriving at what it is, listening to people's views, but adding your own assessment for taking that decision, not being led only by one analysis or one analyst. All those are the processes which will help us. But there is a much larger power which is important in how we take decisions. And I'll touch upon what Ram said. Even in maths, if you all know, whenever we solve a maths problem, we will check the answers page. We'll check the answers page and just confirm to ourselves, yes, the answer is right. I'm sure all of us have done that. And we will do that whenever there's an answers page, check to the answers page and make sure that our answer is right. There are no answers page in life. And this is what Ram said in the earlier thing. There are no answers page in life, and there is no way at the point that we take a decision, somebody or anyone or anything can say, this is the right decision, the answer is right. Ram?
Go ahead. One more, I think.
No, therefore, it's about the power to take decisions, listen, consult, decide. An intellect, whenever we say intellect, I don't think we wanting to get into its detail, but it's devoid of agitation. Okay, all the emotions have been set aside. It's devoid of arrogance. It only knows that this is the objective to be met. It has removed all the disturbances, the agitations and the emotions. All arrogance is removed. You're quite okay to listen, consult and discuss with people, take their views. But I still know as a decision maker, what is the objective, what are other parameters, what is falling in line, and that I will be able to act upon it only when no agitation, no arrogance, but clarity and an egoless decision making whose idea is not important, objectivity is Ram.
So very quickly, for some of you who may not have heard about this word buddhi, we act based on one of two equipment in our body. One is called the mind, which is described as, full of likes, dislikes, full of emotion, and symbolized as a monkey, which means restless. And there is no limit to what a mind wants. Why can't I play in the Australian Open? I have the visa, unlike Djokovic. So why can't I go play in the Australian Open at 70 plus? Yeah, maybe next Janma, says the Buddhi. So the mind has likes, dislikes, and reach for the stars, kind of. The intellect is the one that has discrimination, right, wrong, and the ability to channelize all these aspirations, all these emotions into a focused, objective decision making. How do we make sure that the buddhi is available at the time of decision making? And we have given about, applying it, keep questioning, all these steps that have been described by Chanakya. All of that are methods of strengthening the buddhi so that what we do during the day lets us sleep during the night. And we don't keep saying, oh my God, or I should have said that, I shouldn't have said that, whatever. So the whole exercise is to make sure buddhi or the intellect is available at the time of taking decisions by constantly doing these Chanakya steps, so that we become more and more objective in the way we deal with situations and relationships. It doesn't mean emotions don't come into play, but at the final point, it is the buddhi that lets us take the correct decision. That is the role of the buddhi in the quality of our action. JK?
Yeah. So clearly, we have shared with all of you that more important than the analysis are the solutions. And we have shared with you aspects which can help us to move towards that solution. And in taking those decisions, either the process or to ensure that the buddhi is available, and that will help us move towards either the most appropriate, right, correct thing to do in any situation. So I want to share something from one of these Lilliputians, ordinary people, one that I experienced, which I call a rat in my air conditioner. So this happened about maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, just about the time COVID had started. And I found some, rat droppings from the split air conditioner, sometimes falling on the floor. But I knew there was no rat really inside the house. I mean, that would have been obvious. Then I found that it was always the droppings were just below the, that evaporator blower of that air conditioner in the room. So I figured out that it is somewhere happening from inside the air conditioner, but okay, being this, super smart guy myself, I sort of figured out that rat must be coming through that, they have the tube which carries the gas that goes for the air conditioning, which then connects to the unit outside, mounted on the wall outside. So I thought there must be some gap between that, and the rat was coming through that, getting into that air conditioner and going out, because it was not staying there. Because slowly I found some pieces of thermocol and all that starting to fall. So I was wondering that maybe it was having, tasty meal of those other stuff inside that air conditioner. So thinking what to do, I said, hey, we may need to, I was on the second floor, so I have to build a scaffolding. Somebody has to climb up. Then I have a good friend of mine who's in the building industry, and he told me, no, JK, not only the scaffolding, we must make sure that the people have safety equipment, helmets and belts, and you must get police permission, because if they fall down, it's your responsibility and you'll get sued and blah, etc., etc. It was becoming a big thing. So becoming a big thing, and I was thinking, how can I do all this? And then this COVID has set in, so I'm not even sure whether I can invite people and go about doing all this. But every day I'm finding there's a problem. Then there's this Manikandan, who's the electrician, helps out in our office and stuff. He visits our flat for everything because he's the guy. I said, okay, yeah, he is at least a known guy. I can invite him into the flat, and I called him and said, Manikandan, this is a problem. There's something which is happening. And I downloaded all the data. So Manikandan, we need a scaffolding plus this, plus that, plus police permission, plus safety belts, plus helmet, plus etc., etc. Whether you and your brother can do it and blah, etc. He looked at it, he did all that, and he listened to my entire story, and he said, "Yes, sir, we will do it a little differently." Yeah, I mean, he spoke in Tamil, but he said, "Yeah, I think it is that hole, but we'll slightly shift the air conditioner." And he slightly shifted it, and he saw, yes, there's a hole. Then he said, "Nappa, white cement vaangittu vara." He went and bought white cement. He used one lovely cardboard plastic sort of cone, and into that cone he filled up that white cement, and he sort of injected it into the hole from this side of the bedroom. Didn't need to do anything, and it filled up the hole. Then he did something, closed that air conditioner. No gas leak, no nothing, no scaffolding, no police permission, no helmet, no belt. In 15-20 minutes it had set itself. So beyond the data, beyond the analysis, in moving to that solution, with that clear intellect, I found an ordinary Lilliputian, but that's what I experienced. Ram?
Yeah. So, at the beginning, we were saying we need to improve self-improvement, ourselves to become superior. But how do we do this? By such situations, and learning from there how to use our intellect, how to move to solutions and simple things. So our learnings and lessons we can pick up from around us as long as we are aware and open to that learning. That is really why we give these examples of Lilliputians, because we are saying it's little improvements every day that makes us a superior person. So that's really the Manikandan story. Yeah, JK.
Plus, Ram, there was another aspect which struck me, that Manikandan was not overawed with all that grandiose stuff that I was, giving him. I am the CEO and he's getting all his revenues. Nothing. He independently applied himself, and that I thought was value. Independently applying yourself and then coming up with something, and not being led by only what one great analyst or one particular person.
Or by the boss.
Or by boss, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
One lovely little other story, we have shared this with you many times, but for some of you, it may still be new. There was this country where they had a peculiar system where anybody could be king. Ram, you want to continue that? Because I've said this so many times.
Oh, right. Okay. So anybody could be king, and you were king for 5 years. But at the end of 5 years, there was a river. You're taken across the river to an island. And on that island, there was ferocious animals. And that's it.
Forests also.
I'm sorry, there's a forest, and therefore there were a whole bunch of animals. And it means sure death at the end of 5 years. But for 5 years, you were king, and it was wonderful. Whole lot of people used to come thinking only of those first 3-4 years. And in the last year, they would suddenly remember, oh my God, what's going to happen? And kicking and screaming, they had to be carried to the boat and tied there and taken and pushed off into that forest on that island. And soon, not too many people were wanting to be king because they were suddenly remembering this. One young man came up and said, I'll be king. Smart fellow. And everybody felt saying, hey, do you know? Maybe you don't know that at the end of 5 years, that's what's going to happen to you. And he said, yeah, I know. I've been here. I've been watching. I know. And sure enough, like everybody else, first 3 years, he ruled the place wonderfully well. And everybody was happy. Year 3, year 4, year 5, his behavior didn't change an iota. And everybody said, maybe he's forgotten that, we're coming. And on the 5th day, the anniversary, when he's to be taken, he was up before everybody else, had a nice hearty breakfast, dressed in royal clothes, walked straight towards the boatman. And everybody was saying, does the guy know what's going to happen? And everybody was floored by his behavior, carrying himself kingly, walking to the boat. And the boatman said, my God, literally we have to tie the fellow down so that he won't, overturn the boat. And I was worried about my life, taking these people across, and you're behaving like this. So as they went closer, he said, what do you get paid doing this job? He said, I get paid 1,000 rupees. He said, I'll hire you for 2,000. You row the boat from my side of the island. He said, this guy's gone cuckoo. He doesn't know that I'm going to leave him and come back. He said, no, you come with me. In the 5 years that he was king, he knew what the end game is. That at the end of the 5th year, he would be put onto that island where there was this huge forest and ferocious animals and all of that, and that would be the end. In the 5 years, when he had all the resources under his control, he built an incredible kingdom there, using all the resources in secret, so that at the end of 5th year, when he had to go, he had used the resources that he had and built himself a future. So when you are not under pressure yet, year 1, 2, 3, your clarity of thinking is far better. And he used that to prepare for that 5th year. And therefore, he had a kingdom that was even far more glamorous, superior to what he left behind to come here. So that is the story of the 5-year king. JK?
Yes, Ram. So, I'm just going to add 2 more lines to what Ram said, to say that what he did was, he told the boatman, at the end of the 1st year, I sent 1,000 hunters to that island and to that forest, and they killed all the wild animals. At the end of the 2nd year, I sent 1,000 woodcutters, and they cleared the forest and they created a place. The 3rd year, I sent 1,000 masons and carpenters who built a palace and houses. The end of the 4th year, I sent 1,000 administrators and other aspects who have set there a process in place. So I'm going there to rule over already 4,000 odd people who exist, and a lovely kingdom that I've set for yourself. It's a startup kingdom, and I'm happy to offer you the position of a boatman in that startup kingdom. So like Ram said, it's about what you do, and therefore you're not overawed by data and stuff, but moving towards the solution. So that's the story of the 5-year king. Yeah, learnings from the above, clarity beyond the analysis. And like always, we say, please share your own anecdotes on learning from a Lilliputian via email to Ram or myself. Whole summary, far more important than the analysis is our ability to move towards that solution. And we have shared multiple ways, methods, and approaches for us to move towards decision-making and solutions. Thank you. We're ready for any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. It was a great session, and all people are very interesting in to move on with your future sessions also. So
any questions, Vishwa, please open it out if anybody has any questions.
Yeah. So
anybody, please raise your hands and then.
Or just unmute and ask.
Yeah.